Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson, Tony Sukalis, and Tyler Waldrop. You're watching Bama in the NFL on BamaInsider.com. Thank you very much for watching. Wherever you're coming from, please let us know where you're coming from in the comment box. We wanted to bring you something new on BamaInsider.com, Bama in the NFL. With so many guys in the NFL, figured it'd be good to bring that to you right here on BamaInsider.com. If you're listening via podcast, thank you so much. Plenty of places to get the coverage on BamaInsider.com. I got Tony Sukalis and Tyler Waldrop, you guys. All checked in. You can get their great coverage on BamaInsider.com. Of course, you guys know who I am, always on the YouTube channel with Andrew Bone, BamaInsider.com. Here's the show outline, and here's how things are going to work tonight. Bama in the NFL. We're going to talk Madden ratings. We're going to reveal the top 10. I sorted out all the ratings. It was kind of a labor of love. We're going to look at rookies that report to training camp on Tuesday, 11 total when you add Jalen Hurts, who just actually signed his deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll talk more about that. Derrick Henry inked a nice $50 million deal, which includes $25 million in guaranteed money. We'll talk more about that as well, all tonight on BamaInsider.com and Bama in the NFL. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Yeah, I was excited to bring in, Bama in the NFL and kind of like think about that idea. I mean, there's so many guys that were formerly at Alabama that are now in the NFL. I mean, it's like they totally dominate the league. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, it seems like there's more it's not even seems like there is more every year because Alabama is consistently getting double-digit players drafted. So, it's really exciting to see these players have so much, and not just be in the NFL. They're having success. You've got guys like Derrick Henry, the rushing leader. I view Julio Jones as the best receiver in the league. So you've really got, now you're going to have a quarterback. That was the last piece that was really missing for Alabama in the NFL, is they didn't really have a quarterback, and now you're going to have Tua, and I think you're going to have an elite quarterback in the NFL.
I thought you were going to say now you have Jalen Hurts in the NFL.
And as of today, with a new contract, you have Jalen Hurts, who you can still count as I don't know. Do you guys count Jalen Hurts as an Alabama player since he finished his career somewhere else? Or?
I mean, I think Jalen started at Alabama, and he exited out on such graceful terms. I certainly think he is still a valuable part of Alabama. Left a good legacy at Alabama, left on good terms. Nick Saban had so many positive things to say about him. I certainly think he is part of Alabama. So I kind of lumped him in with, the rest of these players. So there's 11 total guys that will report to training camp tomorrow. Tyler, I mean, what's your take on Jalen? And I guess we can, we're jumping ahead just a little bit, but I mean, he just inked his deal. Actually, I have a nice little graphic on Jalen. We can bring that up right now. I mean, that's not too shabby, right?
Yeah, that's a good starting place for Jalen. And, I thought even, back towards the end of the season, just when you saw what he was doing with Oklahoma in November and December, it wasn't always perfect, but it seems like he grew up a little bit as a passer. And I thought this is a guy that's going to go in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. And he did. He went much higher than I think a lot of people thought. But, I mean, I think he's in a good spot to prove himself. Being behind Carson Wentz, you got to figure he'll get a chance at some point. And I think Jalen's talented enough to, really start for an NFL team. I don't know if he's going to have a long career. I think he's going to have to prove it.
Hey, if you guys have comments, definitely post them in the comment box, and we'll showcase those right here on BamaInsider.com. The deal that Jalen did ink, and I had that up. I'll read it out because I didn't read it out. I know some people listen on podcast only, but it's a 4-year deal, $6 million. That includes a 1.94 signing bonus. So I think it's a great setup for Jalen Hurts. And here's a show outline again. We wanted to start off talking about the Madden ratings. And I know there's a lot of people out there that play Madden. Everyone's been talking about the Madden rating. I went through and sorted out I sorted out number one. Tyler's already seen my list. Mm-hmm. It's an extensive list of everyone that played, that plays, in the NFL from Alabama. And here are the top ratings when you sort them out. No surprise. Julio Jones, 97 overall. I think even the Falcons were mad about that. They probably wanted him in the 99 club. Mm-hmm. Amari Cooper, 93 overall. Eddie Jackson, 89. Marlon Humphrey, Dante Hightower. Josh Jacobs. How about Josh Jacobs? I mean, in his second year, 88 overall. Kareem Jackson, 87, had a big year last season. Then Minkah Fitzpatrick as well. As soon as he got transferred right to Pittsburgh, I mean, we really started to see the Minkah Fitzpatrick. Let's kind of talk about these ratings. I mean, is it absolutely just clear that Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL? We'll start with you, Tony.
I certainly think so. If you look at what everything he can do, and it's not just little like slants. I know, like with Michael Thomas, I think he makes the catches. And if I'm going down, put it this way: if I'm going down a 2-minute warning, a 2-minute drill, and I need a receiver to throw to and a go-to guy, he's the guy I want on my team. He can do just everything. I think he's a complete receiver. He can block too. I wouldn't have minded him being in the 99 club at all. Like I already said before, I think he's the best receiver in the league. It's close. It's not. There's a lot of good receivers, and I think that when you look at those top 3 guys or top 4 guys, it's really close. But I would put Julio on top. If you're looking for a player that I'd want on my team to start at the receiving position, that's who I'd go with.
Oh, and I have to add, I have to redo the graphic, but Derrick Henry is certainly up there, 93 overall. Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you guys as well about Derrick Henry, and I'll fix that graphic right now. But Derrick Henry, I mean, he finally got his deal, and we'll talk about that later in the show. You think he's the best back in the league, Tyler? I mean, I think a lot of people might talk about Saquon Barkley from the Giants as well. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Derrick Henry definitely deserves to be in the conversation to be the best running back. Put on the spot, that's a tough one. Maybe Saquon Barkley, it probably deserves to be there for now. I think it's tough to compare. The Giants asked Saquon to do a lot different things. Saquon has a more involvement in the passing game. Derrick has shown he can do that in smaller doses. But I mean, when I think about what Derrick Henry means to the Titans in the NFL, I just think about that playoff run, and particularly the jump pass, honestly. I mean, Derrick can kind of do a lot of things. Yeah, Tony, I mean, he's not known for the jump pass, but I mean, still, I can't get over that.
What's his passing rating on Madden?
I know. I mean, I was looking through photos today and I saw the jump pass and I was like, I'm probably not going to use that photo, but obviously, he knows we can, Derrick Henry, I mean, absolutely beast mode. And we'll talk about his contract later on. Let's talk about some other guys on the defensive side that we're talking about Madden ratings, and I'll update that graphic in just a minute. Amari Cooper also up there. I mean, the lineage of wide receivers from Alabama, it's quite amazing. Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, and now you're going to have some of these younger guys that are, entering the NFL. Jerry Judy, Henry Ruggs, and we'll talk about those guys in just a minute. But Tony, talk about what you remember from Eddie Jackson, Marlon Humphrey. I mean, those guys both have ratings of 89. Dante Hightower up there also with the 88 rating. Talk about what you remember of those guys back when they were in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you mean in Alabama, but with Eddie Jackson, I think he's criminally underrated, or just under talked about too. He's a guy that I think can do so much, and he's just such a big play guy. We saw that at Alabama with the kick returns and the interception returns, and we're seeing that in the NFL as well. Would have liked to see him kind of maybe get a 90, 91. I think it would have been nice for him to get there, but that's kind of like who he is right now. He's just on the cusp of being that, I don't know, that elite player. I don't think people are giving him that credit where maybe they should. And then Marlon Humphrey, you look at the career he had at Alabama, and now he's getting it done in the NFL. You're seeing a lot of the players like I used to cover just not a few years ago now become NFL stars. It's really nice to see, and he's definitely one of them, one of the best cornerbacks in the league as well. You go down to that, those 80s, those high 80s. Josh Jacobs is a guy that I think, in a couple of years we'll be talking about being one of the best running backs in the league. Obviously, set the league on fire. Came really close to winning Rookie of the Year. I think you could argue that he was the Rookie of the Year. It's going to go to a quarterback, but he had definitely had a great season. So there's a lot of young Alabama players that you could see like really getting up into those, those higher rankings for later. So I think it's just, for Madden players, it's an exciting time to be an Alabama fan.
Hey, thank you so much for the super chat, Randall. We certainly appreciate it. Definitely, big supporter. I know you contributed last time as well. So thank you very much for the super chat. And if you guys want to do the super chat, it's on YouTube. You just look for the little dollar sign at the bottom right, and that certainly supports the staff, and we sincerely appreciate it. So we'll leave that up, Randall. I actually wanted to update that graphic for you, and here it is. And Derrick Henry is the number 2 overall player. So here's the updated look. And that's Julio Jones, Derrick Henry, 93, Amari Cooper, 93, Eddie Jackson, and then Marlon Humphrey, covered up by Mr. Williams, gracious, $20 super chat. So thank you very much. We sincerely appreciate it. That's the updated graphic. And I have a couple more graphics that we'll talk about as we continue with the show. But here's the outline, and we're going to now move to the rookies that report to the NFL tomorrow, actually. There's 11 total when you add in Jalen Hurts, as we talked about it a little bit. I added Jalen just because I do feel he is from Alabama. Here are the rookie ratings before we get into that. Take off Mr. Randall's super chat. Here's the top 10 rookie ratings. Henry Ruggs, 76. I think he's a 98 speed, which is the second fastest player on the game. Jerry Judy, 75. Xavier McKinney, 74. And as Tyler wrote about today on BamaInsider.com, Xavier McKinney is yet to sign. Same with Henry Ruggs, I believe. Cheddar Wells, 73. Tua Tagovailoa, 73. Pretty good, right? I mean, considering we don't know exactly where Tua is. We can talk more about that in just a second. Raekwon Davis, 71. Trayvon Diggs, 69. Jalen Hurts, 69. Anthony Jennings, 67. And Terrell Lewis, 67. So I'll start with you, Tony. I mean, Henry Ruggs and Jerry Judy, as we were talking about with the wide receivers, I mean, what are your expectations for these guys? I know Henry Ruggs has, had that weird injury in the offseason, but depending on what type of season we get, what are you expecting from these two? And what do you remember covering these two at Alabama?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll start off with Henry Ruggs because I feel like he could be one of the most exciting players in the league. Just if you look at his ability to affect the game, I think if you look at all the receivers drafted in the first round, he probably scares defenses the most in terms of just, I mean, his electric when he gets the ball, how fast he is. It's hard to defend against that. So kind of like really like a Tyreek Hill, and I think that was who got the 99 speed. So right up there with him for the for the speed. I think Jerry Judy, it might be more of a complete receiver. I know he's a great route runner, and I think I'm expecting a lot for him. I think it's going to really come down to the quarterback, comparisons with those two to see who really has the best year. Can Drew Lock, kind of keep up with that momentum and maybe provide a good situation with Jerry Judy. He might be in a better situation. When you go down the list, it's hard to from a Madden perspective. It's hard to kind of evaluate Cheddar Wells, but I really like his fit there, and I think that Brown's team was like it underperformed, but it still had a lot of talent. And so I think when you look at that, maybe they need a guy that can kind of buy Baker Mayfield some more time, and I definitely think that Jedrick Wills is that. And so it goes down. I think it'd be really interesting to see what Tua's Madden ranking would be like had he not gotten hurt. Would he have had the highest ranking above among all NFL rookies this season? I probably think so. I mean, if Tua doesn't get hurt, do you bump that ranking up to maybe a 76? So it's a really interesting list.
Tyler, I mean, let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa. As Tony just mentioned, I mean, if he doesn't get hurt, I mean, not only Madden wise, but I mean, think about the expectations. If he just has, the season that he was on pace to have, I mean, you're looking at a guy with such high expectations as we go into rookie training camp. What do you kind of foresee when you think about a player like Tua Tagovailoa? I think he's absolutely going to sit this season from whatever type of season we get. Let's talk a little bit about Tua Tagovailoa.
I think unless, obviously if the NFL shortens the season dramatically, maybe this changes, but I can't imagine Tua missing more than half the season. Honestly, if you look back, Patrick Mahomes is kind of the exception to the rule lately. Rookies, especially guys that get drafted in the first round, they're drafted to play. And, we see a lot of these guys, they sit 2 or 3 weeks, but inevitably an injury or, just the starter not being that great. These guys get thrown in normally around week 3. And I kind of expect that for Tua this year. I mean, I don't expect Tua to start game 1 right now, but I think even if he hadn't gotten hurt, they might do what most teams have done. They might sit him out a week or two, kind of let the veteran quarterback have a shot. And then, when it falls apart, they're going to put in Tua. So, I mean, I think they're going to give him a couple weeks to kind of acclimate, and maybe it takes a little longer than it would have, but I expect to see Tua before the midway point for sure.
It'll be interesting to see how breaking into that quarterback position, he's probably going to have a lesser preseason, and how will that affect, his ability to kind of get the offense under his thumb and kind of gel with his receivers and really, win that job over Ryan Fitzpatrick. I remember earlier this offseason, Fitzpatrick said that, he has no problem kind of taking that mentor role. And I think it's really going to help Tua. It's really tough as if you're a quarterback, a rookie quarterback, and you've got some hostility with the incumbent starter. And so I think having that kind of veteran to learn off of, I think, he's in a really good situation. I do think the preseason probably doesn't help him out a little bit in terms of this season, but I don't necessarily think this season's, all that critical for him. I mean, if he plays, he plays. And then, I think it'd be nice for him to get some games under his belt. I think ideally it'd be nice for him to come in maybe midway through the season. I don't think the Dolphins are contending this year, especially now that the Patriots got Cam Newton. And you think that, the Bills and the Jets, I think are just a little bit. I think the Dolphins have the foundation now to have a good team, but I don't think they're a contender this year, even without Brady in the division. So I think it's probably good for Tua to kind of use this year as a springboard for next year when, I think you could start to see the Dolphins becoming more and more of a contender then.
Let's kind of give some context to our listeners out there. I think that we should all tell our followers who our favorite NFL teams are, because I think, in college, obviously, we're not fans of Alabama. We report on Alabama, but we can have NFL teams. So I'll go ahead and start. I am a fan of the San Francisco 49ers. I know. Been a long-time fan. Jimmy G, did a great job for the most of the season. They have an exceptional, tight end in Kittle. A lot of names on the defensive side. A lot of people thought that Sherman was going to be washed up, but there he did his thing. Surprisingly, they don't have any Alabama players before signing Jared Maiden, but they haven't signed him yet. So, but they added him, so he would be the one player from Alabama. All right, Tony, you're up. I know he's a huge New England Patriots fan.
Oh yeah, so my dad's from Massachusetts, and so I kind of grew up rooting for all the Massachusetts teams. So, yep, the Patriots fall under that. Under that umbrella, and I'm a pretty big Patriots fan. It'd be interesting to see how they do without Tom Brady, but I'm kind of excited to see Cam Newton. He's one of the best college football players that I've ever gotten to see in my lifetime. So be interesting to see how he kind of takes that next step, and it'll be certainly different than Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's like, which Auburn quarterback do you like, right?
Right, yeah. I have Jarrett Stidham as well, who I was actually pretty high on. So it'd be interesting. I definitely think it's Cam's job to lose. Yeah,
definitely. What about you, Tyler? Do you even have an NFL team?
Yeah, okay, I'll own up. I enjoy rooting against the San Francisco 49ers, and that may or may not have a thing to do with
I feel sorry for you. Okay, so unless you're a Chiefs fan. So who did you say? I was talking smack.
That's okay. That may have something to do with Russell Wilson and what they have going on in Seattle.
Okay. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about
what are your views on first and goal play calling games.
I love the play call, and you got to stand by the process, not the results.
No, you had to feed.
Yeah, that was a terrible call. It wasn't first and goal either.
I watched a lot of those games. Seattle did not punch that play in at all that year. I stand by it. It was okay.
This is an Alabama. This is an Alabama show. Before we lose a lot of followers, but I think if you're in the comments section, go ahead and tell that Marshawn Lynch would have definitely punched in the ball from 1 yard out at least one in 4 times.
I kind of looks like you have a fellow Patriots fan. Sadie, what's up? We appreciate you following us. As we look to some of these rookies, and again, the NFL rookies will report tomorrow, which is July 21st. Any defensive players that you guys expect to kind of, really grab the attention as we move into the later July? Terrell Lewis, Raekwon Davis, Xavier McKinney. There's a lot of guys that we really haven't talked about on the defensive side of the ball. Just let's touch on those guys real quickly.
Xavier should have gone in the first round. I can't believe he fell into the second round. I think they're shocked they got him in the second round. I have no problem saying he's the biggest steal in the draft, and he went at pick 36 overall. I have really high expectations of him this season and down the road. So that's the guy that jumps out to me. Just when you're looking at Madden ratings, I expect him to jump up. Everything. I'm just all over him this year. I think he's going to be great.
What about you, Tony? Defensive players.
it's really kind of that would be my pick as well. He's definitely the best Alabama defensive player. I mean, it was an offensive class for Alabama, and Xavier was obviously the best defensive player. I think if you're looking at other defensive guys, I think I've always said that I think Terrell Lewis is going to have a better season in the NFL or not a better season, a better career in the NFL than he did at Alabama. A lot of that has to do with injuries, and I know he's still a little bit raw, but I think once he puts it together and the NFL coaching that he gets, I think he's got the natural talent to be a real star at the position and be one of the best pass rushers, at least in terms of talent. And that's what he's got. I think Anthony Jennings is a good fit for the Patriots. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a star at that level. I'm getting a snicker just because I mentioned the pass, but no, I mean, I think he's going to be a solid player. Going down to Liz, I think Raekwon's a guy that I think you could flip a coin on. I think he could be, really good, kind of like Terrell Lewis. I don't necessarily feel like he's as much of a slam dunk talent-wise as Terrell Lewis. And so if you're looking at from a ranking standpoint, I would have ranked Terrell Lewis over all three of those guys that I just recently mentioned. But I still think Raekwon Davis, though, due to his size, due to his talent, could be that guy. Just I'm less sure of he's got, I guess, more what you would call bust potential.
All right, I wanted to talk about Derrick Henry, and he recently inked a new deal, $50 million, includes $25.5 million in guaranteed money. What do you guys think about Derrick Henry and what he brings to the Tennessee Titans? I mean, he did such a great job at Alabama and really played like the Derrick Henry we expected him to this last season. I mean, he really became, just as we said at the beginning of the show, top back in the NFL, gets that big deal. What do you guys think about Derrick Henry? For me, when I think about Derrick Henry, I think he's the way an NFL running back should be, right? I like him, that guys that are 6'3", 245 pounds, a guy that can tote the rock as many times as you need him to. What do you guys think about Derrick Henry and how he's upped his game, throughout the last couple seasons?
You say that's how NFL back should be, but it's really hard to find a human being that's built that
right?
way. So, maybe in an ideal world, everyone would want a Derrick Henry. They just don't exist. I think, the NFL teams are kind of shading towards those smaller backs. We saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire get picked first, and that was kind of a sign that maybe the smaller backs are in vogue now in the league. But I think with that being said, I think every team in the NFL would take a player with the measurables and speed and size as Derrick Henry over anyone else. I mean, we haven't seen as much from the receiving aspect of his game, but I think he has that in it too. So I think he's a guy that, for me, he's worth. It's a lot of money, and he does have a lot of tread on, wear on his tires. But that being said, when you got a guy that's dominant, that can just take over a game like he can, I think you got to lock him up.
Tyler, get some words in on Derrick Henry.
I mean, Derrick Henry, Tony kind of said this. I mean, it shouldn't work. What the Titans do with Henry's frame, the way he plays, it's not supposed to work in the league anymore. Henry's supposed to be, a relic now. He's supposed to be pushed out. It's supposed to be all about Christian McCaffrey and even like Kenyon Drake, who played with Derrick Henry. Like Kenyon Drake probably has a better build and maybe a little bit better skill type for most teams in the league. But I mean, Henry just makes it work. And I think back to the Iron Bowl Henry's last year when he has 39, 41 carries, something like that. I mean, and he did it again the next week in the SEC championship. I mean, Henry just kind of proves that everything says he shouldn't be able to keep going, and Henry just pushes it to another level. So I think in general, Henry is not maybe built how you want to back in the NFL, but when you've got a guy who can back it up like he can, I agree. I think you got to pay him. And I think that's probably he's fifth. I'm making the fifth most in the league right now. I mean, maybe he should be a little higher, honestly.
All right. There was a couple other things that I wanted to go over as we kind of round out to that 30-minute period. And this is, we wanted to kind of gauge the test of Bama in the NFL, and we'll continue to bring content I don't know if it'll be bi-weekly. I don't know if it'll be weekly. We'll kind of, we'll get together as a staff and we'll look at it. And of course, tomorrow night will be our recruiting show with Andrew Bone. I know Alabama has been having a tremendous month in recruiting, and you can catch all that coverage back on BamaInsider.com. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. That certainly helps our channel grow and helps the brand grow right here at BamaInsider.com. And of course, thank you so much for the super chats. If you're listening on podcast, thank you so much. Wherever you get your podcast, just type in Bama Insider Alabama football, and you should be able to find us. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Got some love right here from Mr. Fox talking about Josh Jacobs. I mean, you're right. I mean, Josh Jacobs, we talked about him a little bit earlier in the show, and just the type of player that he is. I mean, he did a fantastic job at Alabama and, of course, with the Raiders as well. I wanted to get to a couple other things as we get to the end of the show. And these are some big topics. And this was posted by JJ Watt on Twitter. And as the NFL gets closer to some sort of a season, these are a couple things that JJ Watt listed that they want to see from the NFL. Number one, we want to play. We want to be as safe as possible. The NFL can mandate the players to show up to training camp regardless if any agreement has been reached between the NFL and the NFL Players Association. We still have not been granted a full and proper training acclimatization period necessary and recommended by the medical and training staffs. We still do not know if there will be a daily testing. And I think that, I mean, those are good questions. And there's so many questions that it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL handles it. And it's going to be interesting to see how college football, if they take any sort of model from that, right? Because we're getting, I mean, players report tomorrow. And just like JJ Watt was explaining in this next clip that I'll show you, they still don't have answers to all this. And that's what's slowing a lot of this down. I think tonight news broke that there's not going to be a preseason. I mean, Tyler, let's go to you right now. I mean, those are obviously, they're not crazy requests from the NFL Players Association.
Yeah. And I think we can all, regardless of what we think or what we feel about the past 3 months, I think we understand, we want our bosses or we want leadership, anyone who's in charge, whether that's a government or not, we want them to tell us where the lines are. Like, what's expected of us? And I think it's fair for the players to know, not even like can you make it safe? Can you just tell us what you're doing? Like, what are we changing because of this, global event? And I think that's fair. And I think it's also fair if you look at the league, this is an unprecedented circumstance. It's hard to come up with, how the red tape or the process for all of these things. And I think you're seeing in the NBA, I think the NBA, they set some guidelines initially, and then within a week of setting the initial guidelines, you saw players, they broke the bubble inadvertently, not understanding, this breaks the bubble or this doesn't break the bubble. And then you see the NBA kind of tighten things up and go, well, we didn't address this, let's tweak this. I think that's kind of how it's going to be for professional sports. And I'm with you. I hope that these professional leagues can get going so college football, college basketball, college athletics kind of has something to look at and model, because I think it's tough right now at an amateur level.
Tony, as I go to you, do you think that like going off what Tyler's saying, do you think that if the NFL is somehow, or whether it's Major League Baseball or basketball, if there's some sort of, if they figure out exactly what process to take, do you think that'll help the Power Five find some sort of direction as they navigate these uncharted waters?
You would hope so. You would hope that college football is sitting back and, just taking notes and seeing what works with all these leagues. And, even if it has to be delayed, I mean, just really kind of coming up with a process, there's times, especially right now, it's not looking great for college football, but we are seeing all these sports go back. And I really think that, if it can work in the NFL, you can make it work in college football. I don't think it's necessarily the same situation. Obviously, these are not professionals, and you've got the school aspect and, campus being open. But I think that they can make it work. And part of me thinks that that they will make it work, just because, I mean, for a lot of reasons, but college football is so big that they'll find a way to make it work.
Tony, I know you follow soccer in the Premier League. They've already been playing. How have they been dealing with this across the pond, so to speak? In your opinion, have they been successful so far? Yeah,
well, in some areas, in some countries, that they've handled COVID differently than the U.S. has, and so they're in a little bit different situation to kind of cope with this. But the quarantine method and the testing seems to be working. I mean, look, you're having seasons being played out 2 games a week in soccer in Spain and England, and Germany finished up their leagues, and now they're going to have they're going to go and play the Champions League in a set location. And I think, it's working without a snag. And I think if you look at that, granted, there's different circumstances, like I said, those are all things college football can draw from and also get ideas from. And I think it really gives us encouragement as people that want this college football season to happen, but to happen safely as well.
Sure. We have a comment from Alex, and Alex, thank you so much. I know you're on our recruiting chat as well. Thank you for joining us tonight on Bama and the NFL on Bama Insider. He asked, what are your guys' options on spring football for college football? Do you see top players not playing to preserve themselves for the draft? And I'll go ahead and answer that first. My thoughts on spring football, I'm against it. And here's why. I think that there's a couple different questions that I have. Number one, what is it going to look like scholarship limit, right? You have so many guys coming in January, these early enrollees. So the NCAA will have to enlarge scholarship numbers. Will these guys all be coming back, right? I mean, you have top level guys that if they don't opt out and they do play, you're going to have the NFL scouting combine. You're going to have the NFL draft. Let's take a guy like Najee Harris. Is he going to play in the springtime? Are these elite guys that are first round draft picks, second round draft picks going to play in the spring? I don't think they will.
I'm pretty sure Alex Leatherwood's dad already said that he wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
So there's one guy right there. There's your left tackle right there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think you run into problems like that. Plus, I mean, are these problems just going to go away, right? Is COVID just going to magically go away in January, February, and March? I mean, people generally start getting sick again in December and January. So I think when you look at what could potentially happen this year, I know people have floated around the idea of BYU, Notre Dame. People are talking Alabama and Auburn to open the season. I think people are just trying to figure out some sort of a season. And I think, in my opinion, that they're going to be able to start some sort of a season, some type of a season. You're going to get some type of game. But my question is, for everybody, are you going to be able to finish the season? And I think that's going to be very difficult to do. I don't have all the answers, but that's kind of my take. What's your take on a spring type of season, Tony?
I don't want a spring season, and that sounds terrible. And I do want football, and I miss football as much as everyone else here. But there's just so many problems with it. Like you brought up, with our key players going to just randomly start, dropping off of teams. The thing about it is the NFL is not planning for a spring season. So how is that going to affect players? And if I'm a top player, I'm not going to risk my future for a season that you don't even know is going to end. So yeah, I'm going to the pros if I'm a top player, and you've got the whole mess with the incoming players. And here's another thing. I mean, the recovery time. Are we just going to move spring football to the spring now? I mean, you're going to really cut back on what these kids can, the natural time it takes to just recover from a season. And so, like, when is this season going to be played into? If it starts in March, like what I think some people are saying, I mean, we're going to go all the way into May with the season. And I get that we won't have spring football, but that's a whole nother mess in itself. And so I think at that point, I almost want to cut my losses and just kind of really focus on having a full normal 2021 fall schedule. I don't think we need to think that way yet, but just with the topic of with the spring season, I'm just against it. I just don't think it will work as much as I want to see football.
Tyler, do you want to chime in on this, or should we move to our next topic?
No, yeah. As far as spring football, I guess I'm a little more positive than y'all are. I'm not opposed to spring football. If we say, I think my big concern you touched on, Kyle, is a season can start, but how valuable is a season if we get 3 weeks in and then it shuts down, and we have some leagues, Power 5, they're only playing conference games. How's that going to work in the playoffs where there's only 4 spots? What if everybody does that? If you tell me what spring looks like, everybody plays 10 games, everybody plays one big non-conference game, or if you tell me what that looks like, then I can maybe get behind it. I think the thing that bothers me is giving up on the fall for this unknown, undefined spring season. I think if we go, the options are 5 or 6 games in a couple weeks, and then we're probably shutting down. Or we have a safer, more structured plan with maybe 8, 9, 10 games in the spring. Then I'm all for the spring. I want as much football as possible.
If you're going to go into like a 4 or 5 game schedule, well, let's just not call it a season. Let's just call it a different version of spring football. And you play 4 games for the sake of football. You know, you get these kids extra games, and you can make some money off of it and maybe cut your losses. But you can't have a season with 5 games. You can't determine a champion with 5 games. So in my opinion, maybe have an advanced spring or to kind of make up for it. I don't know, but
I think what I was talking about there is just what Kyle alluded to, is kind of, you just because you start a season this fall doesn't mean you finish. And I think that's my concern. Is I would hate to start a season. You have some big classic games. Alabama plays Georgia, and then you get to like Alabama, LSU, and that doesn't happen. There's all this build up. Maybe LSU's undefeated, defending national championships, and then you don't see it. I personally don't know how I would be able to function if we started the season built up to some of those big games, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of cut out from under us, like the NCAA tournament back in the spring.
Right.
We've this is Bama in the NFL, but we've obviously morphed into the topic that everybody continues to talk about. Nobody has the answers, and everybody has questions about it. So and with no uniformity with the Power 5, it's really confusing. That's why we're talking about the NFL, and the players will report to training camp. That's the rookies on Tuesday, and then you'll continue to see more guys continue to head to training camp. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens during this week. Very big week in the NFL. I believe there's some baseball games scheduled for later this week. So we're getting closer to some sort of a season, and one of these sports has to really pave the way and help these other sports come around. I mean, where I'm from, back in New Mexico, the governor completely postponed the fall football season to the springtime. I believe California will now be starting high school football in December, in January. So there's a lot that goes into that as well. And I know the state of Florida, I know they're talking about their season as well. And we're all kind of waiting on Texas football. That's kind of like, outside of the Power 5, it's like Texas high school football, and whatever route they determine, that's going to speak volumes for, how the rest of the state is feeling, and a lot of the country. And I think Texas high school football, I mean, there's nothing bigger than Texas high school football. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on our show, Bama in the NFL on BamaInsider.com. Please hit the thumbs up button. It's completely free. So is subscribing right here on YouTube. If you want to be part of BamaInsider.com, I'm going to play a commercial real quick to show you how to get free 30 days. It's not too difficult. You can go over to the website right now. I'm going to play that commercial, and then I'll come back, and we'll close out right here on BamaInsider.com. But stick around real quick. Here's how to get free 30 days on BamaInsider.com. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. This is how to get free 30 days on BamaInsider.com. First thing you got to do, go to BamaInsider.com and click on the top banner. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to create an account, email, username, password. The second thing you're going to do is confirm your subscription. Make sure that the promo code is entered right here. It says promo successful, roll tide. The third thing you're going to do is enter your credit card information. It has to be valid, and don't worry, you're going to get that 30 days free. As you can see, once you've added a credit card, you're going to get the promo code. As you can see right here, it says $0. After that, you got to make sure and cancel within that 30 days if you don't want to be charged that $9.95. But hopefully, you're happy with all the coverage on BamaInsider.com, so you won't need to cancel. Once you're a premium subscriber of BamaInsider.com, you can access Andrew Bone's recruiting board. You can jump on the Talk of Champions message board and have a great time with thousands of Alabama Crimson Tide football fans. We hope to earn your business at BamaInsider.com. And if you're listening on podcast, I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, just go to BamaInsider.com, start at the top, and you can figure out how to get 30 days. Of course, my email is kyle@BamaInsider.com. Not too complicated. And I'll be happy to assist you with any type of customer service questions that you might have. Stick around Tuesday as we bring back Andrew Bone as we continue to talk recruiting right here on BamaInsider.com. For Tyler Waldrop, Tony Sukalis, Kyle Henderson, this is the BamaInsider.com Bama in the NFL. I was going to say podcast because it is part podcast. So let me close that out again. This is Bama in the NFL on BamaInsider.com. Follow us on all our social media channels. Thank you so much for the super chats. Mr. Williams coming through with the big $20. We certainly appreciate all the support right here on BamaInsider.com. From beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this is BamaInsider.com staff saying good night, and we'll catch you guys soon.